Welcome to the 100 Club. This is Tom, joined by Rich and Ollie, and we are today having an interview with Sue Redfern, the umpire who has been at the centre of the game this summer. Keep with us and we'll find out all about the 100 from the umpire's point of view. And if you're enjoying this content, give us a subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. Sue, good afternoon. Hi, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks very much. Yeah, good.
No, thank you very much for joining us, because I think every time I turn on the cricket this summer, you seem to be front and centre, so pretty busy at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a very busy summer for myself. No complaints from here. Just very lucky to be given the opportunities to be umpiring where I'm umpiring. So I'll take every bit of umpiring. Thanks very much.
As I say, people will know you this summer from your umpiring, and you've been involved a long time in that regard. But of course, before that, you were an international player. So I was just wondering if you could sort of tell us a bit about your journey into cricket and how you made it all the way to the England team.
Yeah, sure. Playing seems so long ago. I'm feeling pretty old, to be honest now. Yeah, used to play. Was very lucky. I got selected to play for England when I was 16. So played in some ODIs and some Test cricket. There wasn't any such thing as T20 around in those days. Yeah, played a few tours and a World Cup. When I finished playing, kind of like when I hung up my boots, I decided that I wanted to stay involved on a volunteer level. And thought umpiring, give it a go, and yeah, I've been very lucky to where I am from here. So yeah, good choice, good decision from my side.
I think it's fair to say that you know, don't take this the wrong way, but you've been at the heart of the game, like as you say, for a very extended period of time, and it seems like this summer it's become particularly prominent, women's cricket, and the 100's clearly a part of that. How do you sort of assess the feeling around the women's game at the moment? How does it feel to you?
Oh, do you know, we often use the term game changing, and I honestly do think you can feel something different, Tom. Something has changed as a result of the first 100 match which we were involved in. That atmosphere and the way the players were feeling and the responses we were getting from the media and the television, there is a real momentum and there's a real feel that this is a major thing for women's cricket, and it's a really exciting time to be involved in women's cricket, to be perfectly honest, and it's been long overdue. We've been fighting in the background for a long time to get some form of equality and to really showcase the skills of the female players. So this is a great time to be involved, and it's a great privilege to be watching talented cricketers on the professional stage show how good they are and show that it's a real viable part of the game. And kind of like this is hopefully the springboard for future and more things in the women's game. So last year the T20 World Cup final, I was in the stadium watching that final, and to see 86,000 people enjoying that game of cricket, I think where we are now with this 100, kind of like actually seeing domestic cricketers, professional cricketers combined with overseas players and our England players, it's a really exciting time to be part of women's cricket, to be honest.
Obviously the media, some people have been quite, a bit anti, the 100. They've kind of questioned the format, but for us, it feels like that exposure of the women's game is kind of like the real big win in terms of this tournament. Can you kind of see that rubbing off on the other formats, in terms of following of women's cricket?
Yeah, I think, this is just demonstrated and has just shown that actually the skill sets of the players, the quality of the fielding, the bowling and the batting, the hard hitting, what I'm really enjoying is, the boundary sizes aren't small for the women and we're still clearing the boundaries, so it's really demonstrating those skills and the development there. And I think, you can transfer that. I think the one thing about a shorter format is it makes the competition a little bit closer and the teams a little bit closer. So it becomes a little bit more competitive. Obviously, the broader you get, the longer you get in terms of the format, the probably likelihood is the team with the greater skills are going to probably come out on top more often than not. Whereas with the shorter format, you get those close games. And I think that's the really exciting thing about this 100 is, most of the games have been really close. They've gone down to the last 10 balls in most cases. That's both men's and women's cricket. So, there's definitely that momentum there in terms of this format. Obviously the teams are still getting into the tactics, but, it's exciting cricket to watch, and certainly exciting cricket to show new people, a new audience into the game. So I think, absolutely, once you see that, you want more. You definitely want to kind of like have more, really, and whether that be different formats or a continuation of the 100, it doesn't really matter, as long as we're getting people interested in cricket, interested in spectating and playing, and volunteering in wider roles as well. And it's, from my perspective, it's great to see other females umpiring as well in this tournament. It's long overdue, and it's just really exciting to see more female umpires coming forward.
So you mentioned, the tactics of it briefly there. I've always wondered, as a current umpire but former player, when you're out in the middle, do you ever sort of have the player's mindset where you're thinking to yourself, what would I do in this situation? How would I approach it if I was bowling right now? Does that sort of ever cross your mind, or are you just too focused on the job in hand?
Yeah, you're always thinking what you do, aren't you, to be honest? But if I'm being honest, I'd be a terrible coach, I think, but, I think, you always are looking at it from kind of like, well, if I were playing, I'd be doing this at this point. This is how I'm reading the game. There are a few surprises when you see teams doing something different. And, I think you learn, as an umpire, you learn every game, kind of like you learn something new every game, whether that be through tactics, whether it be through a piece of law or just a game situation. But, kind of like you do have a look and go, well, I'd do this in this situation. But more often than not, you may be right or wrong. But definitely not coach material.
So one of the new questions the captains have to kind of have in their mind is whether they're going to bowl a 5 or a 10 set with the bowler. We're still figuring out what to call these things, but a set seems to be the new language. Have any of those decisions sort of surprised you when you thought, actually, that looked like a poor decision to keep a bowler on of the games you've stood in?
Probably I've watched a fair bit of it off the field, and I've probably thought, why are we bowling this bowler at this point? Why is that happening? But I think there's been some really good choices of kind of like just keeping, there was a period, I think, in one of the games I was where the spin bowler was getting the better of one of the batters, and, kind of like you think, actually, you should really be re-bowling this bowler. Clearly, kind of like this is going to be 10 balls with low score, possibly a wicket coming up. And, the thing with the 100 is what you're finding is you have a couple of those balls that make a massive difference, don't they? If you have a couple of dot balls, it completely turns the game around, and that win predictor moves quite quickly from one team to another in terms of chances of winning. So, likewise as well, if you hit a couple of 4s or a couple of 6s, again, it kind of like completely changes the dynamic of that game and who's on top in the game. So, it's so fast paced, it moves so quickly. So, those strategies, those tactics, I think are going to become more and more important. And I think the teams will learn, won't they, in terms of kind of like what's best, keeping a bowler on, not keeping a bowler on, flicking ends, because obviously you can bowl a set from one end and then bowl another set from the other end if that's a turnaround. So there's lots of things to be thinking about. I certainly think the captains are probably having a little bit of a hard time at the moment trying to keep a track of things. The scoreboard's something different. It's reading balls, not overs, so they're having to work out mathematically what's going on. I think last night there was obviously rain-reduced games, so obviously some bowlers could only bowl so many balls, whereas other bowlers could bowl more balls. So there's lots going on for captains. So kind of like it's a new format, exciting, but kind of like the tactics side of it and the management side of it, I'm sure the teams will be working it out as they go along, really, and learning on the cuff.
So we've seen a few kind of innovative things in terms of, the DRS decisions are so rapid. You mentioned last night there was a real effort to keep the game going because of the rain. And obviously we just have this general pace of the game in general to move through the 100 balls as quickly as possible. Did you, as an umpiring group, get together before the tournament and have discussion about how you were going to approach umpiring the tournament and how it might differ to sort of other formats?
Yeah, we work together in teams each time you go to the venues, and there's definitely some consistencies which we're looking for. Obviously, pace of play is one of those key things, but it's about kind of like it at the end of the day, kind of like regardless of the format, it's still, it's just a game of cricket. It's still the key things that we'll be looking at ordinarily. We want to get the games on as much as possible, which we want to try and get on in all games of cricket, but we have to, first and foremost, obviously, safety of players is pretty critical. But yeah, kind of like absolutely, we look at consistencies. We are trying to kind of like make sure that the games get played where possible. But yeah, kind of like you can only go. Yesterday the weather was against. Kind of like the umpires and the teams. Really, I mean, a great effort keeping them on. But yeah, there comes a point where it's just too much, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think because we're all so passionate about the game as well. Anyone who's picked up the clubhouse white coat in an amateur game and gone out to the middle, it feels that sort of tension that you must have as an umpire between being passionate and wanting the fun of the sport to be shown, but also having to be very much a figure of integrity in the middle. How do you sort of balance that side of it? And given you probably know everyone out there as well.
Yeah, I think, the key thing for me is I remember as a player, kind of like I was a left arm over medium pace bowler, never got an LB from an umpire, kind of like, so, not that I'm bitter and twisted or that stuck with me for 20 years or anything like that, but, never got an LB. And I just remember as a player, all I wanted was the consistency and the integrity from an umpire to, make the decisions based on a fair decision, really. And that's, hopefully how I try and approach my umpiring is to be as honest as possible, regardless of those relationships off the pitch. I try and treat each player with the same respect and try and treat each situation, each ball with the same concentration and effort, really. So, I think the key thing for me is, I don't want to get too involved. A quiet game is a good game as an umpire, but, I have to be prepared to intervene if needed. But, you want to keep the game running as long as possible, but you need it to be fair for both teams. So, key thing for me is concentration, kind of like at the key points, making sure that I'm in control of certain things. So I'm making sure that my eyes are watching the right things at the right time, and I'm making decisions based on my knowledge of the game and the regulations. So there's things I can do that I'm in control of that can help me make better decisions, and that's what I try and work on and focus on, and not worry too much about the external stuff and what's happening around me. Just focus on those key things that I can control.
Does that include kind of the clock? Because obviously, we've seen a couple of games, I think also on the men's side, where the fielding team lost their man outside the circle kind of for the last few balls, and that's kind of proved quite crucial. Is it something that kind of you as an umpire have to watch out for if the batting side are perhaps having a bit of a faff around, doing a bit of gardening, and do you have to have a quiet word to keep them?
Yeah, absolutely, Ollie. What we need to be doing is making sure that kind of like allowances are given at the most appropriate times. So anything that's out of the control of the fielding team, really, which we give allowances for. And obviously, you also need to look out for stuff like that. Just making sure that the pace of play. We have something in cricket where we say, the batters need to really be ready when the bowlers are ready. So that's a reminder which we give. And there are elements of law which we can go down, which we try and avoid. Obviously, you try and work with the players. We're not there, we're not policemen. That's not what we want to be. What we want to do is try and work with it so the flow of the game works, and we try and encourage and influence where possible.
So we know that even as amateur players that words can sometimes be said out in the middle. Mostly it's humorous, but occasionally it can get a bit heated. How do you strike that balance between allowing the players to express themselves and sort of get into the battle, but without sort of crossing the line? Do you ever have to step in?
Yeah, I think in normal umpiring, it's an everyday occurrence, isn't it? I suppose, kind of like on the professional game, the consequences are much higher than probably the recreational game. Your thresholds might differ between games. For example, if I'm back in recreational cricket umpiring, obviously if we've got juniors involved in the game, obviously my thresholds might be less because we've got youngsters to look after and examples to set. So I think it's really important that, you put out at the beginning what your expectations are for the teams, and remembering as well that I'm not responsible for a player's behaviour. In law, it's the player and the captains who are responsible for their behaviour. It's my job to kind of like say whether or not that's within the law of cricket and that's within the spirit of the game, really. We don't want to go, like I say, we don't want to be looking to penalise players, but we would have to intervene if it is required. And I think kind of like the way in which you manage that, we're all human. We'll do it very differently. Some people will do it with humour. Some people will try and kind of like step in earlier rather than later. We're all different really in our approaches, and the key thing that I aim for in that is being as authentic as I can to make it real. I just think about kind of like what are my what are my expectations? What would I expect from this game? Is that appropriate behaviour or not? And you've just got to be honest and clear in your communication, really.
The 100, as you say, is just a game of cricket at its heart, but there have been maybe a dozen or so adjustments to the formats and some of the laws that I think generally have been well received. But are any of those, something that you think might need to have another look at, or that you might find challenging to actually use as an umpire?
At the moment, there's nothing really that crops up in terms of kind of like being something that's totally outlandish. I mean, I'm sure there are areas in the development areas when we get the feedback from the first year that there might be some changes in the adaptations. I think, for me, the idea of bowling consecutive overs is really exciting. It's different. I think the feedback so far has been that, if you're caught, it's irrelevant if you've crossed or not. The new striker generally faces. I think that's a really exciting part of the game. It's a new thought process, which means that you immediately put pressure on the batting team, and there's immediate reaction to that wicket, and it puts the fielding team back at the in the book seat, really. So I think that's a really exciting element. The 5 balls definitely speeds up play. Likewise as well, not changing the end speeds up play as well. So I like the idea of countdown clocks. I think that's really good because it gives the players kind of like an area of when they should be starting to bowl, so it gives them time to get their fielding positions in place. So I think there's some really good innovation. Obviously, with any tournament, I think if we go back to when T20 started, there's adaptations from when T20 was originally put in. So, I think as we learn from the tournament, as the organisers learn from the tournament and get feedback from the players, which is the most important, I think, they'll find out how to adapt that.
Yeah, we were chatting before about in the light of the test match at the moment, maybe the use of rain radar or something like that is something we could look at in terms of if you know that there are going to be showers, say at the 3/4 mark, then adjusting early and ahead. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Oh, it's above my pay grade, Tom. So certainly, if you can find a rain radar that's accurate, then that's all good, isn't it? So kind of like it depends how accurate it is, because obviously you don't want to be taking time out of the game if rain doesn't come, and we all know how difficult it is to forecast rain. So, but yeah, well out of my pay grade.
One of the other new laws that I think I've got my head around most of them, but the one I haven't quite grasped is the waving of the card yet. So can you clarify exactly what's going on when the card is being waved?
Yeah, it's a really just simple kind of like, it's just to indicate that that's the end of the first set of 5 from one end. That's basically what it's there for. Right. So it's done every time. It's the first set of 5 at one end. It doesn't need to be done at the second set of 5 from an end because you're physically changing ends. So pretty much you would hope that the spectators have noticed that. You'd like to think, but yeah. So it indicates just the end of the first set of 5. So you know that you're into another set of 5. Kind of like it's different waving a card, but I'm sure like everything really, counting to 5 has been quite a difficult task as well, because you're so used to counting to 6 as an umpire. So we're working really hard on making sure that we're not over bowling overs or under bowling sets, really. So we're working really hard as umpires together as a team to make sure we just get those 5 legal deliveries in each set.
Yeah, I think whenever I've umpired, I think 5s and 7s have been, relatively common.
Yeah, I once heard a story that an umpire did a 12 ball over and thought it was 6 balls. So, kind of like it happens. It's one of the hardest things in umpiring. Is actually counting to 6, 5 now for the 100.
So, as Tom said at the start of any time I've turned on women's cricket this summer, I think I've seen you on screen.
Sorry.
No, it's fantastic. Obviously, the England-India series where you stood in the test, but you were also involved in the men's series, the England-Sri Lanka, where you were part of the umpiring. I think you were the 4th umpire for one of the T20s. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
For your personal career, and what are you looking at in the next few years? Where would you like to get to with your umpiring career?
Yeah, for me, obviously, kind of like developing as an umpire is pretty critical. Umpiring in the women's game is different skill set to umpiring in the men's game. So for me, having the opportunity to officiate in both sets, both formats of cricket, is really important for me to develop more rounded skills. So my ambition is to continue umpiring at the highest level I can umpire at, whatever gender that be. I don't think cricket umpiring has to be gender specific. I don't think that's a requirement, and I think it should be down to the abilities and the desire really of an individual umpire to umpire in environments where they feel. Like I say, there are differences between umpiring men's and women's cricket, and obviously they do require some different skill sets. Kind of like I want to be umpiring at the highest level I can umpire, really. So yeah.
What would you say is what is the biggest difference in terms of between the two genders?
Yeah, so the easiest way I can describe this is, kind of like the games have different rhythms. So basically in men's cricket, kind of like, because I think when you think about performance male athlete in cricket, they've had like a number of hours of training and match practice, whereas the women's game has probably had less hours of match practice as professional cricket. So in men's cricket, there's that rhythm that kind of like is a consistent rhythm through the men's game. So as an umpire, kind of like you can almost feel what's going to happen in the game, and you can predict that, and that helps you being in the right place at the right time, making sure you've got your eyes on the right place at the right time. Whereas in women's cricket, that doesn't necessarily happen, and it happens differently. So for example, the throwers, the fielders, generally in men's cricket they throw back to the keeper, whereas in women's cricket it can go either way. So if you're not careful, you find yourself out of position. So there's just different rhythms there. And I think in the women's game, obviously because there's less pace on the ball, there's more time for the ball to do more in the air. So you'll find that there's more lateral movement there, and you'll also find that obviously kind of like the ball doesn't bounce as much. So effectively what you find in there is LBs are probably higher, and also as well in the women's game, to generate a lot of power, there's a lot of players who do a lot of sweep across the leg and kind of like do a lot of reverse sweeping as well to generate that power, which means again there's different shot styles, which means that as an umpire that keeps you busier in terms of an LB possibly. And the noises, because again the pace of the ball, kind of like the sound of those noises are different. So if you listen to the sound of an edge in men's cricket, it's clear and it's sharp and it's crisp, whereas in women's cricket it's probably a little bit duller and it might sound like a bit of a pad rather than a bat. So obviously kind of like you just need to adjust how you're umpiring and making decisions, and kind of like it does affect how you look at the game and how you're working in that game.
Sue, I don't think I could have a top level umpire on without asking perhaps a slightly obvious question, but with having to carry hand sanitizer and everything else, pockets must be getting full. What do you have to take on to umpire in your pockets?
Yeah, I'm one of those umpires that actually likes to carry less, to be honest.
Okay.
The less I can get away with, the best. But no, we've got wipes, obviously, for the ball and for COVID at the moment. For the 100, we're trying to carry a spare ball out on the pitch as well, just to speed it up if we lose a ball, and obviously need to replace a ball as well. I always carry a spike repair. So if the batters or the bowler needs a spike tightening, I've got one of those, and I've got a multi-use tool as well. So kind of like one of my favourite jobs as a cricket umpire is I'm legally allowed to tamper with the ball. So you can cut things off it and fibres off it. So kind of like, so I always carry kind of like a pen knife and a sharp pair of scissors and a multi-tool, kind of like Swiss knife style thing. So kind of like, and also as well I wear contact lenses. So literally kind of like I carry some contact lens solution because I want to be able to see. I think if don't need any more excuses for poor decisions, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the batter might get a little concerned if you're starting to apply fluid sort of thing.
Yeah,
just after a decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that has been fantastic and really an insight. And can I just take this opportunity as well to say you're a pioneer and a legend of the game. You were awarded the MB in 2018. So thank you for everything you do for cricket as well. That's really appreciated.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
It's been great chatting to you. If you have enjoyed that, stick us a thumb up. That'd be great. And we'll catch you next time on the 100 Club.